Hello, this is Angela with Permaculture. It is a scorching hot day in Portland, Oregon today. And I posted in my Women in Permaculture Facebook group this morning asking how can we view the heat wave that is currently striking much of the United States and some of Canada and Central America as a benefit, as a resource. So in permaculture, we strive to find a use for all situations, find a way to harness and get the most out of all situations that we can, all elements, all factors that impact us as people and impact our landscape. So when I say, how can we view the heat wave as a resource, I truly mean that, even though I personally hate hot weather, despite having grown up in Tucson and in San Antonio. I don't like hot weather. That's part of the reason I settled on the West Coast. And, you know, I would prefer it to be 64 degrees and drizzly all the time, or 45 degrees and drizzly. But I know that that's not what we're facing right now. And I know that with climate change and weather patterns becoming pretty difficult for a lot of people, we have to be adaptable and we have to make changes. And the first step in being adaptable, in being resilient, is viewing the change as an opportunity. So I can sit and grumble about it, or I can say, how is this going to make me change the way I'm doing things so that the heat is something I benefit from? So I asked in this permaculture group that I run today what people are thinking in terms of how they can harness the heat wave. Some of the things I'm thinking about are how can I better design my 100-year-old house to run more efficiently. The front of the house here gets straight southern exposure, and normally that would be good in a cool gray climate. You want to maximize the solar gain, but it's not passive solar design. So it means in the summer when it's hot, the front of my house and all of these windows just absolutely bakes. So how can I make my house design, how can I change the way I'm doing things in my house and make tweaks and changes and additions so that my house is better able to be a comfortable place to live and a more efficient user of resources in hot weather? The other thing I'm thinking about is how can I maximize water conservation in my garden? How can I minimize water loss and heat stress in my plants? So the coming heat wave is getting me to think creatively and getting me to start brainstorming about change to conserve resources and shelter and protect not only my home, but also the garden itself, so that I live comfortably and my home is a place that is less environmentally impactful and that my garden is still productive. Okay, so not only is the heat wave and climate change getting me to think about more efficient design, how to be a better steward of my resources, and how to get more bang for my buck, and how to protect my garden and my home better, I also want to think about how can I use the heat and the sunshine straight up as a resource on its own? How can I harness the power of the sun? Now, obviously, the simple answer for most people, the most obvious answer, is solar panels. Portland is one of the worst cities in the world for solar panel efficiency. Maybe that's going to change in coming years, but as of right now, I'd have not invested in solar panels because they just are not cost effective. And we have hydroelectric power here. So that's one way. Other things are using the sun to cook and preserve your food. So I do not have a solar oven. I want to make one. It's on my list of things to make. But I do have a solar dehydrator right here. So I want to talk about that today, how it's made and how I use it to use the sun on a hot day so that I use zero electricity, completely passive design to dry fruits, vegetables, flowers, herbs. Now today I'm drying cherries. I have sour cherries and sweet cherries. So I eat a lot of dried fruit. I love dried fruit in the winter. I cook with it. I put it in soups and stews, and I put it in granola, and I just eat it straight. But I can't produce enough on my own property, and I'm working on changing that. So I do end up purchasing some from a farm in California, and then I have it shipped, straight up the West Coast to me in Portland. I figure there are food products that have a lot bigger carbon footprint, like tropical fruits like bananas and mangoes and avocados that get shipped a lot farther. But for me, getting some dried cherries and dried apricots that are grown in California, while not perfect, is an imperfect solution. But I'm also trying to dry more of my own fruit. Now, I have been using this for about 8 or 9 years. This came to me from a woman in a local gardening group who said, hey, I have a solar dehydrator. It's been sitting in my shed for years and years and is pretty banged up. Do you want it? And I took it sight unseen. And it has a very heavy glass top and then some trays inside it. When we got the dehydrator, everything on the outside was separated and rotten, tremendous amount of dry rot, and it just wasn't salvageable. The entire outside was not salvageable, but the glass top, which I'll show you in a second in more detail, and the drying screens inside were in good shape. They were protected. So those were the only parts of the dehydrator that we were able to salvage. And my dad, who has been doing woodworking for 60 years, helped me rebuild and restore it. So we used the original specs and we just remade the entire frame and we put it on casters so we can roll it around. It's quite heavy. This is a very thick piece of glass. I'm not sure what it originally came from, but it's very thick. It probably weighs almost as much as the entire rest of the dehydrator. So it really takes the sun in here, and then you can see there's a series of trays that slide in and out. And you load them up with your fruit or your herbs or your flowers, what have you, and you close the door so you get a nice greenhouse effect, and you let it sit in a sunny spot for several hours. And that's it. Unload it and put it in jars when you're done. The end. Now, I have found that I do need to rotate the trays. If the whole thing is full, I need to rotate the trays. And that will help me get more even drying across all of the trays. Now, there are some trays that are not partitioned, and then let me show you this one really quickly. There are some trays that are divided into 3 sections, so you can separate small quantities of fruit or veggies or herbs, and that's really nice. And then there's some for when you have a larger amount that are just one solid piece of screen. So I really love that difference. So that's it. It's very, very easy to use. I did get a question when I shared this in the homesteading group. The bottom is open to allow for good air circulation. The cold air comes in through the bottom and up. It gets really nice, good air circulation, because when you're dehydrating fruit, you need a place for the moisture to go. I found that the top doesn't really get much condensation on it at all. So let me show you. I'm going to load in the cherries here, and then I'm going to leave them in the sunshine. We are sitting in the shade right now because I am baking and I'm very, very sunburned from helping do my dad's yard work earlier today. You can't see it. My shoulders and my back are, yikes, which is my own fault. But I'm hiding in the shade now. And because this is on casters, as you can see back here, you can see a wheel, I am going to be able to scooch it forward into the sunshine in order for the fruit to dry. So One of the benefits of having a solar dehydrator is that you don't have to feel guilty or like you're wasting electricity because you are only using the power of the sun. So that makes it much easier to dry small quantities of fruit. I just put these sweet cherries in here. They need to be 1 layer thick, okay? Never want to stack them in multiple layers. And these are pitted. I went through and pitted them all. A friend of a friend gave me these cherries and I saved some for fresh eating, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to dry some. And I'm also going to be drying sour cherries from my tree. Now the same thing, I use a lot of these for pies and what have you, but I'm just drying the ones that I picked this morning. That way I don't have to worry. If I only get around to picking a bowl here and there, I can throw them in the dehydrator and dry little batches at a time. Versus a dehydrator that uses electricity, I always feel like I have to pick or prep a huge amount and fill the dehydrator to capacity because I'm using 8 hours worth of electricity. So now you can see I've loaded it. The glass is on top. It's immediately going to start drying. I'm going to scoot this into the full sun in a minute. And I close the door. There is a little magnet here that helps hold the door closed. And that's it. Got my wheels, so I'll scoot it back into the sunshine. It rolls really easily. And then I'm ready to go. The fact that it's on wheels means that I can move it around the driveway as the sun moves throughout the day. Now these should take several hours, and by tomorrow I will have some lovely dried cherries. So while I don't love it being roastingly hot here in Portland, and I would much prefer the cool weather and rain of October to what we're having right now in late June, I have to live in the real world and I have to design for a permaculture system that functions in the climate in which I reside. And that means I need to be adaptable. I need to be able to make changes that are climatically appropriate. And it also means I need to view the sunshine and the heat wave as a resource and not miss the opportunity to take the power of the sun and dry food for my family for free in a passive setup like this one. Super easy to build. Anybody with basic woodworking skills could build a solar dehydrator like this out of scrap wood, make sure it's lead free, for very little money. Piece of glass like this you could get either cut at the hardware store, or I'm sure you could find a piece at a thrift store like the Rebuilding Center. Now, I hope to be back later this summer when I have built my solar cooking oven to make soups and stews and cakes and things like that. Definitely on my list. I just haven't had time. In fact, I have a whole nother project back here that I will be making first, and I'll be getting to that soon. All of those big screens have a purpose, and I'm really excited about it. So thanks for watching today. I hope you are staying cool and safe and doing the best you can to thrive in this hot weather. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe in order to learn more about permaculture and sustainable, resilient living. You can also check out my Patreon. It is in the description. Thanks.